you for joining this webinar today that will provide a quick overview on how to receive reimbursement for the 2019 Equipment Assistant Grant Funds that your district or institution has been awarded. My name is Christy Berger, and I am a Child Nutrition and Wellness Specialist at the Nebraska Department of Education Office of Nutrition Services. And I am going to be assisting with the post-award process for these grant funds. Before we dive into the meat of the webinar, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. We have placed all callers on mute to help reduce potential noise and speaker feedback, but please ensure that your computer microphone or your cell phone or office phone are placed on mute to ensure no interference. We also encourage you to participate through a cell phone or office phone if that is easier for you. The call-in number is displayed on the screen here, but you can also participate directly through your computer. That works just as fine. We also are going to track who has attended this webinar. So if you could please type in your name or the name of the school district or institution that you work for in the chat box, that would be greatly appreciated. Also, remember that you can use the chat feature to ask any questions that you may have, and we will do our best to address these items at the end of the presentation. Joining me on the call today is Sharon Davis, the administrator for the Office of Nutrition Services, as well as Steve Bauer, who's the Director of Grants Management, and they will be assisting us in answering any questions that you have in regards to how to receive reimbursement for the funds that you have been awarded through this grant. First of all, congratulations on being awarded the 2019 Equipment Assistance Grant Funds. Our office understands the time and effort that you put into the grant application by identifying the highest priority equipment pieces needed for your school food service operation, gathering equipment specifications, and obtaining vendor quotes. Thank you for dedicating the time to complete the application process. We understand that having the necessary and properly working equipment is critical to maintain a well-functioning school meals program that ensures students are being fed nutritious meals that prime them for a full day of learning. We know receiving these funds is exciting for you, and it's certainly exciting for the Office of Nutrition Services when we know that our school systems are able to better meet the needs of the school food service expectations. To reiterate, the grant application and the purpose of the Equipment Assistance Grant that USDA developed to help school food service authorities purchase new equipment that will help in serving healthier meals that meet the current meal pattern. Emphasis on serving more fruits and vegetables, improving food safety, and expanding school meals access to students. The USDA Policy Memo SP 15/2019 that provides guidance and expectations for the 2019 Equipment Assistance Grants. The memo indicated that the Agricultural Appropriations Act authorized $30 million to state agencies to allocate funds via the Equipment Assistance Grant. Of those funds, Nebraska was awarded just under $170,000. The Nebraska Department of Education Office of Nutrition Services was able to fully allocate the funds that were awarded to the state of Nebraska this year. We opened the grant to all school food service authorities participating in the National School Lunch Program. We received 44 grant applications with the request of a total of over $315,000 above the amount of funding our office had for allocations. This number validated that our Nebraska schools have a high need for good performing equipment, and we hope that USDA will continue to offer these grant opportunities for years to come. In regards to the timeline of the grant, the performance period for the equipment assistance grants is 2 years within the current grant form fiscal year 2019-2021. State agencies must complete the entire award process by the end of June, so this June 2020. This is a critical date for NDE. If there are any remaining funds that have been left unspent by awarded school food service authorities, our agency has the opportunity to return those unawarded applications that were received during the appropriation process to potential awards, to potentially award those additional school food service authorities that did not receive funds, thus allowing more districts to have the opportunity to cook and serve healthy meals for their students. Furthermore, school food authorities must complete their entire procurement and expenditure activities by the end of fiscal year 2021, or September 30th, 2021. If the district does not have their equipment purchased and paid for by September 30th, 2021, NDE cannot provide reimbursement. Over the past few equipment assistance grant periods, Nutrition Services has experienced many roadblocks that delay the district from being reimbursed in a timely manner, and at times prevented our agency from being able to provide reimbursement for equipment purchases. In hopes that we can help you avoid these roadblocks with this grant, we would like to take the opportunity to discuss what exactly is necessary to receive reimbursement for the equipment purchases so we can easily check off your request and pay them in a timely manner. Because you have been awarded an equipment assistance grant, you must continue to conduct your procurement activities in a manner that provides to the maximum extent possible open and free competition. All federal, state, and local procurement laws and procedures must be followed with purchasing the awarded equipment with federal grant dollars. During the application review process, NDE ensured that the equipment requested was competitively procured and that the equipment requested showed to be necessary, reasonable, and allowable to your school food service program. The purchase or cost of additional equipment, labor, or installation that was not included in the approved budget will not be an allowable cost. For example, if a district needed additional specialized labor to install a dishwasher, but this labor or the cost of this labor was not included as part of the budget on the grant application, this district is responsible for cover of this cost with other funding mechanisms. It is important to note that you must obtain the exact equipment and from the exact vendor Nutrition Services approved from the grant application. If the district purchases equipment from a vendor other than who is listed on the grant application or purchases different equipment than what was approved, NDE cannot reimburse and the district will be responsible for covering the cost of the equipment with non-federal dollars. When a different piece of equipment or a different vendor is used than what was awarded, this eliminates fair and open competition, which is in violation of the federal procurement rules. You must immediately notify our office if the equipment purchased or vendor used is different from what was awarded from the grant application. Nutrition Services must then report this to USDA. Already with this grant, we have seen school food authorities not purchase the approved equipment, and our office and the USDA are working with them to determine what processes and actions need to be taken. Once you have the equipment purchased, inform all the necessary parties of its arrival to schedule installation and labor. If you remember from the grant timeline slide, your district or institution does have the ability to purchase the equipment anytime between now and September 2021. However, our office encourages you to purchase the equipment as soon as possible. As these components are coming together, getting the equipment purchased, installed, installation scheduled, and working around feeding students, it's important to stay organized. It is critical to keep track of all the grant documentation and invoices for the equipment purchase. NDE is audited regularly to ensure that grant funds are used appropriately. So we will be requiring specific documentation in order to apply for reimbursement. To begin the file organization process, there are several documents you need to keep on file for nutrition services, for when nutrition services conducts an administrative review. A component of the administrative review for school districts and institutions participating in the National School Lunch Program requires that the state agency to review any equipment purchases made using the nonprofit school food service account. Nutrition Services keeps a list of school food authorities who have received an equipment assistance grant. So the reviewer will want to see the physical piece of equipment that was purchased and learn how it has helped improve the school food service operation and participation. Per 7 CFR 210, the National School Lunch Program regulation, the school food authority must retain all records, including grant awards, for at least 3 years, plus the current year. So that's a total of 4 years. You will want to retain a copy of the grant application that was submitted to the Nutrition Services Office, the grant award letter, the grant award notification, and all invoices associated with the purchase. The grant award letter outlines exactly what documentation is required for NDE to provide for reimbursement. This template award letter shown here on the screen is highlighted, showing where you can locate the information. The documents that need to be submitted are the report of expenditures. Let me click out of this. Required of grant. This is also known as the NDE 28-003 form. Copies of all the invoices, a detailed printout of the expenditures from your school's accounting system. We will go over each of these in the next slide. Here on this slide, there is a web link to the NDE 28-003 form. It's also in the chat box on the Zoom group chat box. This is a fillable form that you can download to your computer and complete, and then print it off or save it as an electronic file to be submitted back to Nutrition Services. Although the form has instructions, everything you need to complete for the equipment assistance grant is outlined on the award letter and is also on the right-hand side of this screen. Let's walk through it together, so when it comes time to complete, you have an idea of what needs to be done. We've also numbered this form for this presentation, so it's easier to follow. So number 1, this is the current grant cycle we are under for this award. So in this space for number 1, you would put Equipment Grant 2019. Number 2 is the 6-digit agreement number that is the school's agreement number. Number 3 is the fiscal year for this grant. So this is under fiscal year 2019. Number 4 is the school district's name. Numbers 5 through 7 doesn't need to be completed by the authorized representative for the school meals program, but we do encourage that individuals to complete this form. Number 8 in part 1, only complete row B. The amount in this row is the amount that is being requested for reimbursement. Line B in part 1 cannot exceed the amount of the grant award. If more funds than anticipated were spent for a piece of equipment that you were awarded prior to the purchase, the district must cover that cost with a nonprofit school food service account if it's an allowable cost or other applicable funds. Additionally, the amount must be equal to or more than the capitalization threshold listed on the grant application. If the district expends less than the amount of the capitalization threshold indicated on its grant application, the purchase no longer meets the federal definition of equipment and NDE will not be allowed to provide for reimbursement. Number 9 is simply just selecting the month the equipment was purchased. And then numbers 10 through 12 on this form must be signed by the authorized representative listed on the school meal application in the online C&P system. If it is returned to us and is signed by someone other than the district's or the institution's authorized representative, the form will not be accepted. So please ensure that this piece is still filled out correctly. Also, NDE will need a copy of the purchase order that clearly indicates the date when the equipment was purchased. The purchase must take place during the grant award period. So it must take place between March 4th of this year and no later than September 30th of 2021. If the purchase was made before the grant award period, NDE cannot provide reimbursement. We did have this situation happen when a school food authority with a previous grant, and they were able to move those pre-purchased pieces of equipment to a different school building and cover the cost with other funding sources. And they were still able to utilize the grant funding to purchase what they have requested. So there can be some options to continue to use that grant funding as long as there's communication with our office. This is an example of a purchase order that was submitted to our office with a previous grant. I've highlighted the date to show that we do search the document to ensure the purchase is being made within the grant award period. Additionally, we do need a copy of all payment invoices the district is requesting reimbursement for. That would include equipment, installation, internal or external labor. Nutrition Services will use this document to verify the payment was sent to the vendor who was approved on the grant budget requested on the grant application. The invoices must clearly state what the vendor is charging for the district. We have received invoices in the past with no details, and NDE could not justify reimbursement for something we didn't know was being paid for. Let me show you an example of payment invoices we have received in the past. For example, this invoice is from Galley Inc. Clearly states what's being sent to the district. So here it says cold pan tables. And this invoice was stamped paid to clearly indicate to NDE that the equipment was purchased and paid for. If your district or institution is using in-house staff for labor and installation, and this was indicated as a component of the grant budget, you must include a time certification log. It should indicate the hourly wage, number of labor hours, and an indicator of the work completed. Also, the accounting ledger is really the area where Nutrition Services has most of its issues. Public schools must adhere to the NDE accounting code requirements as outlined in the Program Budgeting, Accounting, and Reporting System for Nebraska School District Manual. And it's linked here on the screen, and it's also linked in the chat box. The equipment purchased must be coded under the school lunch program and indicated as a capital outlay object. You can also obtain a copy of this manual from NDE's Finance Department's webpage using the web link on the slide. And as I said before, it's in the chat box. The dimensions for fund reimbursement table can be found in the Program Budgeting, Accounting, and Reporting System for Nebraska School District Manual. This is located on page 9. We have highlighted what the Central Accounting Division is looking for when reviewing the accounting ledgers submitted with the Equipment Assistance Grant reimbursement documentation. So in the first column, 06 is required and indicates that the school nutrition funds are being used. In the second column, the next number is a 2, and 2 shows is for expenditures, but we don't always see this. It's normally indicated by the document in this expenditure form. In the third column, we see that it's coded for federal programs. So 4,000 indicates federal programs. And in the final column here, 500 indicates it's a capital outlay because the equipment purchase is a capital expenditure. And this is the piece of code that we typically see missing or incorrect. So please ensure that the object code is 500. Let's look quickly at an example of what our office has received in the past. So this accounting ledger is an example of what NDE typically receives from a public school. As you can see in this example, it does follow the NDE accounting coding requirements up here. You can see 06 for school lunch, 4,000 is acceptable for the federal funding, and then 500 at the end here indicates that it's a capital outlay. You can see by the highlighting on the document, oops. You can see by the highlighting on the document, it has all the necessary components for NDE Central Accounting to sign off on. From non-public schools, we often receive a printout from an accounting software such as Excel or QuickBooks. Please ensure someone in the office is aware of these requirements. These requirements are in place because of the grant is from federal funds, which may slightly impact the way the office typically handles the financial books. We are more than willing to help all districts and institutions with this piece of reimbursement. You just need to reach out to us with any of your questions, and we will do our best to help you through those required documents. Please feel free to contact us or Steve Bowers, who is the Director of Grants, with these questions, and his contact information is located later in this presentation as well. As shown earlier in the presentation, this grant award letter was sent to the authorized representative and food service director, and that award letter contains the items that are required to be sent to our office for reimbursement. Ensure that you use this award letter or this presentation to verify that you have gathered all of the necessary components. Once you have gathered all the necessary information, please send it to Nutrition Services via mail or email. Either submission type is acceptable. Once the documentation is received, we will review it to ensure that we have everything that we need to begin the reimbursement process. Please allow us about 10 to 14 days to respond to all of the necessary documentation that is received. Just like you guys, we are all working in different ways than we have before, and it might take us a little bit longer than normal to respond to mail-in items, but using regular mail is totally acceptable for this grant. But if there are any missing components or questions, we will contact the individual who did submit the documentation, and we will work together with you to obtain what is missing. If the person submitting the information is not an individual indicated on the grant application, please include their name and contact information with the reimbursement documentation so we can make a note of it in our file. Oftentimes, we work with the district business manager or someone in the office who is not listed on the application. After our review, we will send it over to NDE's Central Accounting Division for their review and approval to process the reimbursement payment. Once it gets to that side of our building, if there are any follow-up questions or needs, nutrition services will be your main point of contact. Payments are processed twice a month, and the reimbursement amount will be directly deposited into the nonprofit school food service account, just like a meal claim reimbursement is handled. So make sure once you've received an email that reimbursement has been processed, that you keep an eye on the nonprofit food service account for these funds. One final bit of information. Nutrition Services is required to issue quarterly progress reports to the USDA, detailing its progress on expending grant funds and identifying any roadblocks which have interfered with NDE's ability to spend these funds. The USDA also expects NDE to issue reports immediately upon receiving notice from a recipient that it has encountered a problem. So that we can fulfill our obligations to the USDA, we need you to provide us with the information displayed on this slide. Grant recipients must, at the end of each quarter, report to NDE via email the following information: their progress toward expending their sub-grant awards, along with identifying any accomplishments or challenges the recipient encourages in its expenditure activities, and the amount and percentage spent on administrative costs. The types of equipment they have purchased, and if applicable, any other costs that were covered with grant funds. How the purchased equipment has impacted the recipient's meal program. If the recipient has not yet expended its sub-grant award, an explanation as to why it has not, and an estimate as to when it will expend also needs to be reported. If the recipient returned equipment purchased with grant dollars or is considering doing so, we need to know why it is or has been returned, or why you're thinking of returning that equipment. Unless otherwise indicated by your district, we will send out reminder emails to the authorized representative for this information. So as I said earlier in the presentation, you are welcome to put questions into the chat box, and we will do our best to answer them. And if you have any further questions, want to ask questions either directly about equipment, processing, any of that for reimbursement, please feel free to either reach out to me, Christy Berger, at christina.berger@nebraska.gov. If you have any finance questions, Steve Bowers, the Director of Grants Management, can also be contacted. And that is all of the information I have. I'm going to go ahead and leave that contact information on the slide. And I have the chat box pulled up to see if any of you have any questions you would like answered. I am not seeing any questions. Oh, here. So Craig asked, can you email us examples of completed NDE 28-003 and accounting ledger reports? Yes, I can send out those examples, and I will send out a PDF of the slides as well to everyone who received grants this year.
Any other questions? If there are no more questions, I will go ahead and release you all from this webinar. I did record this webinar, so we will make that available for you to view later as well. And I will send out those documents to everyone so that you can view the slides and some of those documents that are necessary for reimbursement. Thank you guys for joining us today.